All right, next thing I want to talk about, the Pittsburgh Steelers still need a slot corner. Mike Tomlin confirmed at the meetings. I mean, I asked him about center. He started talking about slot corner. We've already talked about that. Where do you go get one? We talked about MJ Devonshire the other day. I thought that was a great conversation. There's a name out there that I think makes a lot of sense for the Steelers, that if he could stay healthy, why would you not go and get him? I think he's an option for them. And to be quite honest, I think that as more time passes, he wasn't a name that had any reported interest, but he's a name that makes so much sense that I think the Steelers have him on their radar. That's former Pitt star Avante Maddox. I mean, there's really no big names left at corner. We've already talked about how Patrick Peterson doesn't make sense. You could draft a guy, and I think they will look to draft a guy, but you want a proven commodity right now because that solidifies your cornerback room. You need that spot. If you fill your slot corner, you don't need any other starters on this defense, which is exactly what the Steelers are looking to do before the NFL draft. I don't know. Avante Maddox, does he make sense? He's only got 4 interceptions his entire career, and he hasn't played a full season in 3 years. But you know, if he could stay healthy, which he's struggled to do throughout his time in the NFL, he does make an impact. Do you view him as an option, you know, coming from Philly? And do you think the Steelers should have interest in him?
I think he is an option knowing that you're going to add depth later, like in the draft. You're going to add someone who's young who could potentially fill some time. Like, I think it would work out pretty well if Maddox is like your week 1 starter. And this is weird to say, like it won't work well if Maddox gets hurt. Like that's not ideal, but like assuming Maddox does get hurt, you've got a guy who's been behind him for a couple of weeks, been able to learn from him, has a mentor in that room that you've just drafted who has some potential ideally.
Yep.
So I think like Maddox only works if he's not your last addition. And I think that's kind of the key piece there because he can't be your only option at slot corner. He can't be the only guy that you've got in there that's just too unreliable. It would throw things too out of whack if he's your only guy in there. Given the injury history, it would make me really uneasy, but you draft a guy to come in and be his backup and learn a little bit. He can be a later round guy that's developmental and, you know, kind of fits in the same mold as Maddox, you know, a low draft pick, but a smaller guy that needed some work, but you know, a guy who could follow the same career path, could take some advice. I think that's the ideal situation for the Steelers and everybody else. I like Maddox. He'll definitely be cheap.
Yes.
And I think you're spot on that when he does play, he does make an impact. You just need a backup plan, obviously, for a guy who has that kind of injury history.
Yeah, 100%. Just to run through some injuries here, okay? We'll go 2022. This list I'm looking at starts in 2022. Toe injury for 3 weeks, hamstring injury. These are all 2022. Ankle, knee, ankle, knee, concussion, ankle, knee. That just goes, I mean, halfway through. That goes to week 12 of 2018. That's how many injuries this guy's dealt with in that short of a span. He is injury prone, so you're spot on. Like you got to have somebody who's going to be able to step in and you're not going to take a significant step backwards. That guy could be an MJ Devonshire. That could be a late round pick that you feel is comfortable enough. It could be a Darius Rush that you hope is a guy that takes a step forward. But you have to feel confident enough in this guy to know that there's a pretty good chance he's going to start throughout the season. I don't think that holds you back from Maddox. But I think you could get Maddox for like a $1 million deal. You know, right. one year, prove it. You got to come in here. You're 28 years old. You know, you still got lots of football left, but you've never been healthy. Can you play a full season, you know, in the NFL and stay healthy? If he could do that, then he'll get a bigger deal elsewhere. I still don't think it'd be in Pittsburgh. But for this season, a 1 year prove it deal, as long as you could have somebody else, I agree with you, makes a lot of sense. I don't know, how low do you go in the draft to make that backup? Does it have to be somebody that's, you know, does it have to be a Max Melton who's like a 3rd, 4th round pick that could come in here and start if you need to, or can it be a developmental piece and you could feel comfortable enough with that?
Yeah, I mean, as it does with every conversation we have about the draft, it like depends on how the board falls, but I would be more inclined to go for like a Melton, you know, a guy who like has starter potential right away. Because I think you need another corner anyway. Like it's not like Melton would be a slot corner option now, but he could be, you know, an outside option in the future. You know, if Dante Jackson doesn't work out, if if that's not a long-term option. Like, I think you still need a guy like that. And I think like aiming a little bit higher than you otherwise might isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Just to kind of cover all of your bases. I mean, I don't know how many guys there are that could make that transition pretty smoothly from outside to slot and then back to outside if need be. But that is the kind of guy I would aim for. I would overshoot on a corner than you otherwise might, just because I think there would be some long-term needs there too.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good spot to start, unless you, I mean, they're gonna get some look. They have some knowledge of how they feel about Darius Rush. If that's, if they feel confident enough in him, then I think you could lower that draft pick and say, hey, look, we could go 6th round, we could go 7th round for a corner and feel okay about that. How they feel about Corey Trice, but both of those guys are giant question marks. And I don't know how confident the Steelers feel in them, just because they either didn't get to watch them at all, or they had limited experience watching them in 2023. So, I think those two play a factor, but I agree with you. If you are not sold on either of them yet, then you have to have somebody that's reliable right now, and that could play a role moving forward, because that's how, like, if you sign Avante Maddox to a 1-year deal, your slot and your outside guy are both gone after the season, and you could extend them both, but are you willing to pay that money for guys? It does. It opens up questions. And the Steelers, while they are approaching this season as we have to win the Super Bowl now, they don't want to approach it as this is it. Like, we win the Super Bowl and then it's back to ground zero and we're going to suck for a couple of years. Like, they want Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl, and you're going to need pieces there long term, cheap pieces. So I agree. And I think corner has kind of like slipped down the Steelers draft boards quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. So to get that guy maybe in the 3rd round makes some sense for the Steelers if it is a guy with starter potential. I mean, Kalen King's an option, but I don't think they have much interest in him. Max Melton's a guy that I've heard that they have a lot of interest in. I just don't know where he's going to go actually come draft day. But Maddox, an option, certainly. And if those 2nd-year guys work out, I think that's a conversation that we'll have about how, hey, maybe the Steelers' cornerback room is a little bit deeper than we expected, which leaves them with even more options moving forward.